All right, we are going to get started. I know that there will be more students joining us here shortly. My name is Dr. Nicholas Hudson. I think I know most of you in this space, and I want to welcome you all to the International Leadership Series for the month of March. And this year, our topic throughout this series has been power and governance. And It's one of the elements of global citizenship as defined by Oxfam. And those are themes for the years have been sustainable development, social justice and equity, human rights, peace and conflict, identity, diversity, and this year again, power and governance, as well as globalization and interdependence. And so all 7 of those elements make up what Oxfam defines as a global citizen. So for those of you in here, a lot of you are trying to become an International Leadership Fellow, or for those that may be watching this yourselves, you need to attend 5 of the 6 International Leadership Series, as well as participate in Art for Social Change. The deadline to participate in Art for Social Change is next week. The winners of Art for Social Change, there's prizes associated with it. It's $250 for the winner, $100 for second place, and $50 for third. And a lot of our conversations relate to social justice, which is the inclusion of everyone in the full benefits of society in both the cultural, economic, political, and social life of a country. And so we're looking at, through the lens of power and governance, how does everyone have the capacity to participate and exercise their power in a society, right? And so power is defined as the ability or an official authority to decide as what is best for others. And so today we're going to look at the state of Texas and how do nonprofits and then you as individuals play a role in the overall governance and power structure in the state of Texas as it relates to environmental policy. Governance is defined as the process of interactions through laws, norms, power, and language of an organized society over a social system. And so we're looking specifically here with the Railroad Commission. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what is the Railroad Commission that has nothing to do with railroads in the state of Texas. But understanding that we all do have unearned access to resources, or we all have privilege, and that manifests itself in different ways based off of our own social group identity. And a lot of us, depending on our social group identities, may face different forms of oppression, which are the systems that maintain advantage and disadvantage. And so we're looking here in the Eagle Ford Shale area, in a lower socioeconomic area, but also throughout the entire state of Texas. When we talk about Railroad Commission and environmental policy, oftentimes we see those from lower socioeconomic statuses or those from minoritized populations receiving a larger share of the negative effects of environmental policy. So today we're talking with our friends from Commission Shift on the importance of your voice in environmental policy with Dr. Maria Reyes, who is a first-generation immigrant from Mexico. She came to the United States after the 1984 San Juanico fire, which was a liquid petroleum gas tank explosion, in the 1985 earthquake. Right after high school, she left to serve in the United States military. As a non-citizen, all she could do is serve under support and supply jobs, randomly ending up as a petroleum supply specialist. She started her higher education in the military and graduated from Auburn University with a PhD in public administration and public policy. As a professor in that field, she taught federal and Texas state government classes here at TAMU for 8 years. The focus of her classes was the development of personal responsibility in governance and civic activism, grounded in power dynamics. Understanding the role of the Railroad Commission of Texas was essential to understanding the power dynamics and the struggle for environmental protection and environmental justice across the board. Her research is interdisciplinary, but her interest in civic activism has brought her back to the topic of oil. And so if we could, please, let's give a welcome to the policy director for Commission Shift, Dr. Maria Reyes. Switch that over and get you your PowerPoint. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. I am the Deputy Director of Commissionship. I've been there for a year this last week. And it has been a fantastic experience. And I am going to question absolutely everything you just spoke about. I want you to start in the space of questioning who defines governance, who defines power, because without that question, you cannot have it. And if someone defines it for you, you stop challenging the structure you existing. So everything you just said was making me cringe. Okay? Just so you know. And unless you start thinking in those terms, you cannot challenge the suppression you already exist in. And that is what I'm going to talk about today. This works? Yes. Commissionship is a non-profit organization statewide that is based right here in Laredo. I want you to think about this. The power structure that is challenging the state of Texas and the most important organization that regulates oil and gas is based in Laredo, run primarily by Laredoans. I mean, if you are seeking any type of motivation, please call us. We will gladly have you join our cause. Our mission is, of course, to reform oil and gas oversight in the state of Texas, but we want to do this through public participation, public support. We really truly believe that Texans need to start speaking up for themselves. No one should speak up for us. And so this is a very important part of our strategy. Who are we doing it against? The Railroad Commission. The Railroad Commission has a mission, and their mission states that they're supposed to be the stewards of natural resources in our environment. If you ever look up the word stewardship, it means protection. Please remember that. The concern for personal and community safety and support for, of course, economic development. And it's international. What we have discovered is that none of this is true. Actually, they violate their mission constantly. And that is why we are doing what we are doing. We occupy the space between private interest and public interest. And unfortunately, nonprofits like our organization carry the burden of the failures of both. And that is a big kind of metaphor that you should start thinking for yourself. Now, in today's society, change, transformation is left to the public. That means in your lap, they put the failures of everything that's taking place. The Railroad Commission puts profit over people. And we have, of course, discovered this through research. Most of our point of view has to be supported by data, by scientific analysis. Why? Because they tend to view environmental communities as only and solely driven by passion. And that is not true. Data, scientific analysis is showing us that there is a failure in the understanding of the protection of the environment. And that has kind of find a marriage with Native American tribes. So right now, recently, you have the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe. They have 12 members walking thousands of miles to bring attention to the fact that their voice is not heard when it comes to environmental protection. At the same time, you have the legislation meeting. I don't know if you know this, but the Texas legislation meets biannually. That means they only meet for 140 days every other year. For 140 days, they create laws that are going to regulate the state of Texas. So as a Texan, you have to pay attention to these times and listen to what they are constructing, because at the same time, they're passing bills that oppose your freedom, your self-governance, the dignity that exists in self-rule. our research has discovered that that agency is a captive agency because the Railroad Commission outside of plural executive is the only commission that is elected. They have 3 commissioners and they are always elected statewide by Texans. If you ask Texans what is the Railroad Commission, most of them don't know that it has to do with regulation of oil and gas. What do they think about? Railroads, right? I don't know how many conversations I've had about this, even while I was teaching during time year. But those donations that they gathered in order to occupy that office very much influence their decision inside the agency. And please think about this because agencies are also full of experts, scientists, geologists, and that means there is an opposing point of view within that agency. By the few, because we're gonna discover what that is. We've also discovered they're not responsible for orphan wells. What are orphan wells? Anybody know? Yes. They are no longer producing oil. Someone has abandoned them and they're still open. That means that whatever is inside can escape into the atmosphere and can contaminate the water, the land, and the air. We have discovered there's thousands, over 8,000 wells in the state of Texas that the Railroad Commission is not studying. Right now, the federal government gave them money, and guess what Texas did? Huh?
Bonuses.
Bonuses. Now, they grab those funds and they're plugging wells. That is because the federal government, which is something Texans detest, is helping out. Instead of the rules sufficiently narrow to force the Railroad Commission to use those funds to plug in. But what's gonna happen when those funds run out? If you don't have the structure to properly respond, those wells will continue growing. So we have over 100,000 wells that are not qualified as orphan. This means the Railroad Commission doesn't recognize them, so according to them, they're not going to be dug under their hood.
They're intended to.
Yeah. So does that mean they're contaminating our precious land? Yes. No protection of our natural resources, right? Nor our health, nor our communities. Securitization. Recently, we lost power in 2021. Storm Uri and Viola hit together. There was a huge freeze, right? And now your electric bills are going high. And if your families are not asking themselves why, they need to. We need to push each other to understand where our power comes from. Because in the state of Texas, it is primarily supplied by gas. That is the primary source, the primary source used to create electricity. How do you create electricity, do you know? You see, that's what I'm talking about. Most of us don't even understand where electricity comes from, right? Or what the role of these agencies could be. You have ERCOT involved, you have the Public Utilities Commission, and unless you understand from the beginning, okay, what is electricity, how is it produced, how does each of these agencies play a role, guess what? You can take a bachelor's. The same is probably happening in Tamil View, right? How many of you know your student handbook? Ah, oh my God, is that not reading your constitution? The professors have read it, so my God, you're giving them an advantage. This is why information is important. We're also dealing with CCUS and hydrogen. What is this? So this big thing happening is a fact. It's not a political ideology. Climate change. What does that mean? Very good. There are various elements that are creating greenhouse gas heating of the air. One of those main gases is carbon dioxide, right? CCUS stands for carbon capture and sequestration. This emerged in the Kyoto and Paris talks as the solution to reduce greenhouse gas emission gases. All right? What is it? This technology that at the molecular level is trying to capture the carbon from the air and is trying to put it in these containers. And then what they're gonna do is they're gonna shoot it under the air. That's capturing. Capturing is putting it in containers. But they have also discovered that this can be used in other ways. And so there is a whole huge battle of profit at molecular level. So imagine this. In Texas, we love using our resources for profit. It's part of our ideology. And what they do is they shoot water with chemicals very contaminated into the earth. Since the discovery of vertical fracking, right? And what they do is these chemicals break apart the hard earth that is under us to be able to release the oil that is there. Why did they have to do this? Because they saw a reduction on oil production. So now we have this new way. But what that's causing is these breakings in the earth. And they're calling this the pore space. They're basically constructing buildings in which carbon can exist. And once that is done, what they're doing is renting that space. Here, bring the carbon here and put it inside this well. However, safety precautions are not taken into consideration. Pipes are not being viewed in order to manage the transportation of carbon according to the safety standards that are needed. So there is a huge potential of failure in this. We are involved in making sure that the Railroad Commission does not get financing. Is it gonna happen? Yeah, it has a high potential of happening. Why? Because of profit. Are we the only ones seeking profit in the world? Unfortunately, no, but Texas is very much embedded in its culture that is a priority. This is why it's very difficult for people trying to change a system when they exist in a system that is already suppressive. The environmental community exists in an extractive economic context. We are trying to become a regenerative kind of philosophical approach. And this is very difficult because in Texas, just like in the United States, we have had roots of how we define government. So in the United States, if someone came to you and they said, hey, what does government do? Do you know the answer? What is the role government should play in your life? Think about it and give me an answer. Yeah?
Act in your best interest.
Act in your best interest. What the hell does that mean?
Everything that you have to be for us. It
Okay, so-
doesn't matter what. Every
Accountability,
single thing.
accountable to the citizen, right? This is where our democratic values step in. I want my government to be democratic. Do you see that word out there?
Sovereignty.
Who said so? What is sovereignty?
Sovereignty is the right to govern. Right, so, or you're giving people the right to govern.
The right to govern yourself. Very good. My heart flattered. Thank you. Okay. The word democracy is not after. But the word sovereignty is. What do you think it means to rule yourself? You have the freedom to rule yourself. Yeah? No. What? You're not forced to do anything. Ah. She said to not be forced to do something that is not good for yourself. That is the dignity of self-rule. Please remember that. What I also want you to remember is that if you believe in this rule, you have to remember that your place where you start is you don't ask for permission. Can you repeat that with me? I don't ask for permission. That's right. Is that something you've been taught? Oh, no. The whole presentation started by telling you what? What is governance? What is power? The minute someone defines it for you, which happens when you ask for permission, they set the limits of your own actions through their answer, you give up your power.
Now, when we talk about sovereignty, we mean to a limit, right? Because if we didn't have any laws, we would just pretty much all be killing each other. We don't have a limit.
You do have a limit, right? How does that limit is initiated in our society?
I mean, I wasn't there when they founded the laws, but
No, but
basically,
you,
the
you're taking,
society,
you're taking US government or no?
well, I don't.
That's the issue.
Isn't
Nobody
it
ever remembers that part.
culture-wise? Different cultures have different sizes and individualized sovereignty has a different meaning than a cultural sovereignty. That's where you have to set limits to govern your. When it gets bigger, you need laws,
Very,
and that's where the.
very good answer, because that's where exactly I was going to, right?
Self-sovereignty.
This idea
is your sovereignty.
of defining the role of government, then it starts establishing a structure. In the United States, these are the values we follow, and they can oppose themselves. So self-rule can be opposed by the idea of stability, right? A stable government, a secure government. But who decides what that definition is going to be? Who decides? In your household, your parents, in your school, your teachers. Look at the setup of today's conversation on power and governance. I am up here just pouring knowledge in your brain, right? Who decides? And why haven't we questioned it? That's the question. So if we get stability from who? From Hobbes. Hobbes very much pushed for this idea that we had to give up certain rights for a secure government. It was Machiavelli who defined that as a stability, okay, as a stable form of government. Now, in Texas, this becomes even more concrete and more scary. You should be scared about how the state of Texas defines this for you. Because unfortunately, it makes this relationship a toxic one. As a matter of fact, environmentally, civil rights movement. These are the voices that are silenced in the structure of conservatism in the state of Texas. And why is it a bad type of conservatism? Because they close the channel of open government. They close the channels to your voice. You need to initiate engagement in order to be able to change this. Is conservatism bad? No. But the way that the state of Texas is structuring it is very dangerous. So this is, for example, an idea. Texas grabs federal law, which they have to, and they reinterpret it into how Texas is going to handle that law. And then that informs their actions, and they become practices. And practices emerge as walls and structures. I want you to think about that. For example, you have this room. Which way can you go to the restroom? Through the door, right? To the left. She said to the left. You see how structure educates you to where those exits are, right? Do you know anyone that might go outside the window just to go to the restroom? There are some. And we should know those people. They make us question everything, yeah? Well, that is what happened. Texas believes in economic growth through the resources we own. They really truly believe that if you own the land, you should have the right to decide the resources that are in that land. That is embedded in the spirit of frontierism that was very much part of us when we moved in. As a matter of fact, this is the idea that kind of very much clashed with Native Americans because they didn't view the land that way. We took over, therefore we redefine what that means. will we continue to do it? So right now, the interest of mineral owners is still present when it comes to oil and gas extraction. And that is a political force that we have to embed in the conversation in order to transform it. Safety, health, and protection of public goods, and this means water, air, and the environment, require the government more than a minimum intervention. That is because that's what government is supposed to be according to our approach. The neutral party that only intervenes when it is necessary. Yes.
So then, question, let's just say that I'm in my backyard and I dig into the ground because I'm gonna plant a tree or something, right?
Good for you.
And let's just say I hit like 20 pounds of raw gold in my backyard. Am I not allowed to keep that?
You are, because it's your land. However, okay, I'm gonna answer this and you're gonna be shocked at my answer. It all depends on when you bought your house, if you also own the minerals of your land. Because in Texas, there's a lot of sale of land where you don't own the minerals, and so if you end up finding gold or oil, it may belong to someone else. But let's say you own it, right? And you wanna keep that gold, you can keep that gold. That is the rule. But what we're talking about here is the fact that someone is drilling to find oil, thinking to themselves, it's within my land. However, the actions that they are taking are in introducing damage beyond that.
So it's not so much the natural resource that's in the land, but more so abusing that freedom to look for something that may not even be there.
But maybe you and I may call it abuse, but a Texan is gonna call it what?
Maximizing utility.
Very good.
Land.
Yes, they're right. It's their right to do that. But I'm glad you're putting it in those terms because now you're understanding where the environmental community comes in, right? In the state of Texas, they keep denying climate change. And please realize that the minute you deny that fact, it informs your policy. Do they do it for self-interest? Absolutely. Do they do it because they're evil? That's actually questionable. Because what I am trying to tell you is that ideology, philosophy, and values very much inform your approach in life. And so if you fight with them on good and evil, they will never listen to you. We're gonna have to fight when it comes to are these values that you support secure within the structure that is emerging. So how do we set limits to mineral owners? Should we set limits? Do we want to set limits? Those are the questions that we ask ourselves. Ask Texans, not the environmental community. In Texas and every other state, they practice what is called preemption. Because what you learn in government class, some of you are learning, is that we have this thing called express powers. What are they? And you know what's so sad that I see people that took my classes there. Express powers are powers that are written to belong to one branch of the government or another, or to one level of government or another. Somewhere they are written to belong. If you don't have those powers, the 10th Amendment says that then they belong to the state and to the people. Where is it? In the Constitution. Very good. In the Constitution. Okay, so what the states do, states like Texas, is they preempt by creating laws that are not written in the federal government that address issues that may become profitable. Right here are the bills that are being debated today. You know what's one of them? If you, your local city, decides, I am going to create an environmental plan that is going to inform our policies and is going to help us protect our environment, guess what? You can no longer do that. Because the state is creating a law that preempts that. In addition, it's creating a bill. You cannot regulate emission of gases even if they're hurting their community. They're preempting that. Oh, by the way, the federal government has discovered that stoves with gas are damaging for the households. Before the federal government creates a law, or we're passing a law that prohibits communities from prohibiting the sale of gas stoves in the communities. So start thinking about the structure that is emerging and the fact that someone is always paying attention. How do we deal with this game? How do we deal with this game that creates a contest in which you don't have power, which I don't have power, not the environmentalists, not the civil rights? This is the challenge, and it is the opportunity that has emerged. We are combining philosophies, and it is a teaching that I very much hope to have embedded in my students. It is engagement. What is engagement? It is you being curious about the other person. When you find someone that you have a crush on, right? What do? Oh, what's their color? Oh, what's their zodiac sign? Why do they wear black so much? Like, what music do they listen to? What state of mind does that put you on? Openness. Believe it or not. No, you're right. You're right. Openness is an open mind. No, can I do that about industry that is poisoning and killing people at this time? Yes, I must. Can I do that about a person that is of the opposing political party? Yes, I must. I have to set my mind in a stage of curiosity to be an open-minded person and engage in order to absorb commonalities. Do you understand that? This is how synergy is created. What is synergy? Multiple things put together, what did you say?
It's not really work together for things.
Is when the sum of its parts is something bigger than the sum of its parts. That is synergy. Put it in your head. I want to be synergetic. Can my relationship with you be bigger than what each of us individually are? That's a community. Can my relationship with my community be something more than as individual? Can my relationship with the state be something more than the context that suppresses me and the spirit of liberation that I have? Yes, it's happening right now. The administration, the presidential administration, established the environmental justice values as an executive board. What is this? They're values that industry has to take into account in order to get funds. What are these funds for? To promote green energy technology. Technology that is resulting in carbon dioxide capturing and sequestration. Technology that is resulting in the experimentation of hydrogen as the next level of energy. Technology that is resulting in better handling of nuclear energy. All of these, the government has to promote. In order to do what? Hopefully in the next 10 years, make such a difference that we do not burn ourselves in this world. 10 years, people, we have 10 years left. I was in UT talking yesterday. Somebody mentioned that in our lunch. Yeah,
10 years ago, what?
10 years before the temperature rises so much we cannot.
Okay.
My question is, what about the people, or let's just say that like, if we get away with all these black fuel sources, right, like the coal, the gas, all that stuff, what about the price of energy? What about that? Are people gonna be opposed because, and that's what's, I don't know if that's a misconception, but that's what's put out.
No. It's a realistic question, right? Because most of us are surviving paycheck to paycheck, right? And one of our worries is this energy cost going to be high? And this is where I was heading. The environmental community is coming together with the federal government, a very unlikely allied, and not fully, we don't agree on everything. But what we're trying to do is address these issues. So they have programs where they fund house weatherization, where they fund the creation of, what was the word the professor used that? Sustainability, sustainable communities. As a matter of fact, each of these organizations, I put them in contact with you a sustainable center that can then expand to the community when it comes to the creation of energy, so that those of us that are at the bottom are not the last ones to take advantage of technology. And can start considering this transition of energy without the fear of the cost to our economy, right? But this is where I was heading as well. These environmental justice values, while they make industry consider the voice of the communities, especially those communities that have kind of been the ones that bear the cost over and over again, those in the cost lines, we call that the cancer alley, right? There's earthquakes happening in Texas, because of the foreshore drilling, because of waste. Okay, but those communities continue to be aimed for these technologies over and over again. These values are going away because they're only an executive order. They disappear after 4 years. So what we are encouraging people to do is to involve themselves to start constructing a structure that lasts, where we demand it. But the question is, how many of you will come out and protest? Well, it's the same question we have about voting. Okay, do I go to work? Or do I go vote? Can I afford losing that day's wages? Or do I go vote to change my future? And guess what? That has to be left to every individual, right? But they are hard questions. And so we are trying to attack them from different angles. Addressing poverty, addressing technology. But who is doing that? The nonprofits. Those that are sitting between civic, public, and private sector. But it is happening. You see this picture right here? That lady that is facing away communicating with affected people in the Gulf Coast. They took us on a tour to see how the oil development of Corpus Christi is damaging the sea, right? That lady is the director of the EPA agency of this region. And guess what? She has been going on tours. The Department of Energy has been going on tours. Because of these values, they have been forced to engage with the people so they can listen to them. Is it something we've been screaming? Yes. By we, I mean the environmental community, by we, I mean the communities that have suffered so graciously recently, right? And we are trying to change the culture and philosophy of us versus them. And it is very difficult because people have truly suffered because of these situations. They are dying. I mean, I'm talking about families and families dying of cancer in this area. And you know that the government up to recently denied the access of data having to do with cancer to be able to study this. Because then you cannot gather evidence. I mean, this is how the structure matters. How your vote matters, how you have to get involved and raise your voice. Because it is only through engagement and speaking up that we can create change. Now, I want you to consider this, okay? There are times that you may speak up and no one may join you. And I'm speaking from experience. But there are times that you will speak up, someone will record you, and others will stand up with you. So don't stop yourself, engage. And engage with those who consider your opinion. All right, any questions? Unless we're speaking about abusive partners, please don't do that, stay away from them, okay? That's not what I mean at all, huh? You don't have to say that anymore. Okay. Have to go there, I'm pretty sure they need this to have a huh? Of course I have a business card. And I feel very flattered that you're asking for one. Any questions, you guys?
I guess just to go back to what I said earlier, because I know you said that well, the language is basically that each person has their own opinion or like, priorities, like work versus, what you say, protest. But I think the common people, most of everyone would agree to get rid of these like oil and stuff and coal. But the bottom line is like, can we mitigate the effects of prices on us? Because if that was mitigated, everyone would say, okay, right away, replace it. But because that mitigation is not there, that's the part. Like, and another thing is, even if, let's just say a majority of people say, yeah, let's change it. But what about the minority? If they don't want to pay more, like what if they really can't afford it? Who's gonna pay for that? So that's why, I mean, I feel like it's a very, very complicated issue. And the only way of solving it is either for the price of the technology to go down itself, which is more development, or there be a regulation on how much the companies can price after changing the, I guess, ways of getting it.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer you from the commission's perspective. And that's why we engage with people to educate them about the consequences of one technology versus the other. That's one aspect that commissionship is addressing. So we're reaching out to communities to see what their main priorities are that would come in conflict with what we are seeking to benefit everyone, right? But I'm gonna also tell you my personal opinion. And the truth is that the minute you ask yourself which one is of higher cost, you give support to the economic side of the argument and to the establishment of that energy sector to continue being what supports you, what sustains you. What we are trying to do is create what they're calling democracy of energy, right? And that is for every citizen to be able to have different resources available so they can decide what is the best energy they can have. In the state of Texas, as of today, that cannot be after the legislative session. As of today, you have the freedom of creating a self-sustaining home. No one has closed those doors yet. But there are bills in to close that. So that's the two approaches I believe, right? It is complex, it is difficult, we're living it. But what we are also living is the fact that change can happen, that people do want to be listened, that engagement is changing how we approach costs. That's how much. And
That's
if you want to
interesting.
join us, that's
So I'm
fantastic.
working on a virtual hydrogen system,
Right.
portable, that if it is invented by the company that's doing my financing, that it's gonna, you could power anything with it and move it. Hydrogen from the air. You don't need to put water in. And
That's
I see
another
your
issue,
project,
right?
the engineering.
The use of water and electricity.
Yeah, that's, I just separated the molecules
Right.
and I'm trying to make it go up for it. But, really
I think to answer your point here, Rick, like, there's a supply and demand kind of finance way of looking at it, at least how I look at it. When there's more availability, the cost does get reduced. There's this called a tipping point that happens, right? So it's the law of diffusion or something, I forget the exact term, but it's like a bell curve. Think about it for those people that bought iPhones to begin with. iPhones were super expensive, right? iPhones were super expensive. And the early buyers, the early adopters are the ones that paid a higher price. So like for myself right now, I just bought an electric vehicle. I'm paying a higher price for it with the hope that eventually down the road, they're gonna be cheaper cost-wise to produce. And I think in terms of the federal government in their policy that was just put in with the Inflation Reduction Act, they're giving tax incentives for people to buy these vehicles as long as they cost less than a specific amount. So it lowers it. So in order for you to get the tax credit, for example, my vehicle did not qualify for the $7,500 tax credit because it was over the amount that the federal government said that it could be used for, because it was a used vehicle. But once more people and more of this supply is in there, the cost eventually goes down and it becomes more profitable. And I think it's the shift in mentality of like, electric energy is more expensive. My entire home is powered by solar, right? I make that choice to pay extra for solar energy in the hope that eventually it becomes cheap enough that other people will adopt it as well, right? And so I think that there is that kind of mentality, like more people do it, the cost eventually goes down, it becomes more profitable.
I just wanna.
Yeah.
Sorry?
That answer.
Yes, and it definitely would help like the transition. I can understand where you're coming from, but I think also we need to regulate and force people to do something. What I mean is what I'm about to propose. What about basically having like an income bracket where if you make this much amount of money, you have to use it. And if you're under a certain level, you can use the darker 30 or
I think that's what you're seeing in, and I'm not trying to interrupt here, but I think that's what you're seeing at an international level play out, right? So those that are developing economies like India and China are granted exemptions in their greenhouse emissions because they're still developing. And does that necessarily play out? Does it also create an equitable system in place there? I don't know. I'm gonna, at least that's my.
That's what I was going to say. Anything you propose, look, when you're discussing the topic, you're gonna get ideas. And that is great. But before you propose it, analyze the consequences of the implementation of that plan. Because one thing that has happened is we debate, but we don't consider inequalities established in the system. And those always exist. Positives and negative consequences always exist. Another thing I am also going to mention is that the language of economics has become the language of governance. Okay, but it is misused. So for example, for Storm Uri, they excuse the huge, people were paying like $40 and went up to like $400 or $500. In some cases, 100, it went to $2,000. Okay, I want you to understand, what they say was the excuse? The demand was so low, the resource was so low that in their economic perspective, they had the right to raise the price. And so all I'm telling you is be cognizant of this economic language that is misused. Because electricity, energy has become such an essential part of life for everyone, the poor, the rich, for governance, for communication across borders, right? And so those terms are misused and we need to consider and sit down and analyze what people are saying to see if it's true. Or if it's just to fill the topics. So, yeah, it's a lot to consider.
I think there's some really valid points that you're trying to get there, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
think that,
Eventually, somebody's gonna find a way to make money. And then
correct.
even my
Your
product,
energy, yeah.
I'm doing it for everybody to get free forever energy out of the air. They're gonna find a way.
Monetize it, yeah. And I think part of the conversation that we're trying to bring here by having commissionship come in and having conversations around this is just to have us think differently and critically about, as Dr. Reyes said, right? Like, what are some of the unintended repercussions of ideas, and think about some of the inequalities and equities that exist within that. Any final questions here?
Actual slide of the potential.
Okay.
I don't have it actually on there, I apologize. Let me click on it.
Like Elon Musk, he found a way to sell electricity. Why? Because he charges to charge your car.
Yeah.
When you could charge it at home for free or with simple adjustments.
Those are just a few. Okay, we have them.
That's an example.
No, I already myself, it should say no,
There's a whole bunch of them, trust me. There's a whole bunch of them right now. The legislature, when does the legislature end?
In May 1st.
May 1st, so they got a month left.
Yes.
all these wonderful policies coming to fruition. I know a lot of you just went up to, they were just in Austin on Wednesday, right? 2 days ago. A lot of you were there.
You guys, please pay attention in your government classes, okay?
Yes.
They are important, because wherever you go, even if it's, non-governmental industry, you have politics, regulations, freedoms, inequalities, and all of that are topics in the government classes. Learn how to battle them.
I think the city of Laredo, for example, had, and obviously I'm not from here, but I know when I first came to Laredo 5 years ago, we had a policy that was put forth by the city council to charge 5 cents for a plastic bag and to get rid of those plastic bags. The state legislature had a preemption put in prohibiting the city or any city in the state from having policies related to that. So it says that we're going to take away your right as a city to do what you want to do. So it's a very interesting thought process as it relates to small c conservatism, as it has historically been limited government, limited oversight. So the government coming into a government and saying, you no longer have the sovereignty to govern yourselves. We're going to preempt your decision-making processes and your elected officials. Such an interesting way to justify where we're moving as a state. Interesting.
That conceptualization is a structure also within our state government. It's called a unitary system. A unitary system, of course, is where the power is on top and then it's used to the bottom, right? In the state of Texas, local entities, special districts, school districts, business districts, medical districts, all of those are considered children of the state. And so the voice that guides everything in the state of Texas, according to the structure, are voters. So if you cannot vote, your vote doesn't count. But if you can vote and you're not voting, you're allowing others to decide for you. And so it's being cognizant of what is happening, how can I change it? Because only by voting can we change this. Only through lawsuits. The city of Laredo created a lawsuit to fight this plastic bag, and it was costly to the city, but we attempted to do it and we lost.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Reyes, for coming in and talking to us here for the International Leadership Series for March. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And if you have not signed in yet, please do so. I'm going to just stop recording.